I am Dr. Swannie Jett, and I have a passion for public health for over 30 years. Now, I'm in a position to affect change. And these are the critical conversations about health in our community with the people who can help me make those changes. Good morning. Welcome to the second episode of CEO Live Talks. I'm your host, Dr. Swannie Jett, and today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Kevin Fields. We need more people of certain races to be in the classroom as teachers because there is a relationship between that.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that sort of dichotomy, that is lost, right?
Absolutely. And it's a real challenge. You know, we wouldn't be talking about this but for our concern and our affinity for success.
Right.
We want our children and our families to be successful. And those of us who have achieved a modicum of success know the importance of education in that process. So you want them to be educated, and you want them to have an affinity for education, a desire to learn. Mm-hmm. But I tell you that the model for education is shifting, is having to shift because of the world has shifted so much. The way that you and I were trained and educated in classrooms, 30, 35 kids, one teacher, no computers. In my day, we didn't have such thing as a computer in a classroom. And
I didn't see it until I was in high school.
Yeah, right.
Might have been a junior.
Yeah, and I'm of the generation that I didn't see a personal computer until I already had an engineering degree. So, so these things are different. And now the advent of augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, some people call it, the ability for kids to learn is totally different. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned that they're not going to sit for 30 hours in a classroom and listen to a lecture when they can learn at a much faster rate through technology.
That is true.
And education is going to have to shift because of that.
That is true. You know, you bring up something interesting, but I'm stuck. You know, you grew up in an environment where you were bused. Now we're reversing back to neighborhood choice, right? So, your perspective, are all the schools the same in Louisville to go back to neighborhood choice?
They've never been the same, in my opinion. The schools are not the same. The schools have their own identity, their own culture, their own impact statement in terms of student achievement. And I've looked at the data in terms of how the school report cards vary throughout the district. And you have, the manual high schools of the world that are at the top of the line, and you have the Iroquois High School that's at the bottom. There's differences from a lot of standpoints. And so, I don't see where going back to neighborhood-based schools is as a solution mm-hmm. to the issue. It's more of a political debate, in my opinion, mm-hmm. that, some folks think we ought to be, school choice, neighborhood-based. Some on the other side need desegregation that does require us to transport and bus. So either one of those formats, in my opinion, are not necessarily a solution to achievement mm-hmm. by themselves. And I think having experienced over 50 years of the desegregation plan, and the data still doesn't say that we've closed the gap in terms of white and black. But we had a gap before busing. Right. We had a gap before then too. So I think the key is, no matter what the format is, understanding what it takes to educate. And part of educating is appealing to the psyche of the individual such that they will apply themselves. You can't teach a child anything if their learning button is not turned on. Mm-hmm. If they're turned off, you're not going to teach them anything.
And that learning button could possibly be they didn't have nothing to eat the night before,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
They living in a food desert, or both of their parents are working in
Or they're
that.
experiencing trauma every
They're
day.
experiencing trauma.
It's treacherous just to go to school. You got to worry about whether you need to take a gun to school. It's
That leads to the other question, because we could go back to choice schools, and we already know our neighborhood schools are not the same. Why is that? And how come the investment has not been made to bring those schools up to the standard of Emmanuel or Mill?
Well, you're talking my language now, Dr. Jett. It's all about economics in terms of the plight of our communities and our people. And we raised a question about why aren't they investing? Well, they don't invest in schools because they don't invest in neighborhoods. And schools are part of a neighborhood, depending on where it's located. And certainly the demographics of the neighborhood, our community has a strong history of investing in black communities, which means investing in black people. It just took multiple pandemics of 2020 to even raise the consciousness level to where we would see more
Right.
happen. And so that hasn't been our tradition.
Right.
And it's certainly the way we're hearing about political debates, there's certainly a retreat from even the gains that we saw in 2020. And so the investment question is a loaded question because, we have failed to invest. And, and I guess you have to qualify, what it mean by investing? Does that mean spending tax dollars? Does that mean more philanthropy? What does that mean? It means, I think, all of those things. Certainly the tax dollars are critical to this whole investment question. And the tax dollars, and I've been an administrator for over 40 years, and I've written proposals ad nauseum where the case is made based on the fact that we're addressing poverty. We're addressing low-income communities, disadvantaged communities, poor people, which is often correlates with color, black people. And but we often see even when a community wins on, those public investments, you look at where the money goes, it doesn't necessarily go to empower the communities economically or the people economically. We see, other groups get empowered economically to take on the issue. And so I think your question about, why haven't we invested in the schools is a bigger question about how come we haven't invested well enough in institutions. And when we talk about investing in the black community, we need to think about investing in black-led institutions, because any community that is going to be viable is going to have strong institutions. We don't have to look too far where we see other parts of towns that the institutional fabric of those communities are strong.
Very strong.
But if in our community, I can't say that. We don't have that testament. I want to say LCCC, for example, the Urban League, Simmons College, we're all fighting hard. Your leadership at Park Duval, and by the way, I'm a fan of your work and have been long before you arrived there, Doc, because I had worked with Dr. Richard Jones, one of your predecessors.
Yes, sir.
Going back as far as the 90s, early mid 90s, when he was at Park Duval down at Carter Homes. I was with the Housing Authority in those days.
I remember, because I've been a fan of your work, because I was at Louisville Metro Public Health.
Yes, sir.
So I've known you a long time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, the whole question about investment is a fundamental conversation about economics and economic power. And that question becomes, who is empowered to create the change agenda for the black schools. If we're going to have strong neighborhood schools, coming back to your question about neighborhood schools, then we got to have a strong neighborhood fabric around those schools.
Correct.
Household by household, business by business, school by school.
Hi, I'm Destiny. I'm the Community Health Workers Manager here at Park Duval Community Health Center. This is my team of community health workers.
Community health workers close care gaps, reduce barriers to care, and address health disparities in our community.
Community healthcare workers act as a bridge between the patient and the provider to stay engaged in the healthcare plan.
CHW strives to work as committed care team members for PDCHC, for current patients, and to provide access to those who need a new medical home. For more information, please visit pdchc.org or visit one of our centers. Thank you.
You know, the interesting thing, and I'm perplexed right now. So you got it, enlightening. You got a civil engineering degree, right?
Yes, sir.
Where did your lens come from to have this dialogue on reshaping communities?
Oh, well, it's a great question. You know, I was, how did I get an engineering degree? That would be the first question.
Right.
Well, first was two things. Well, I grew up in Beecher Terrace. I grew up on 13th Street, right across the street from where I work today. And I witnessed development happening literally right at my door. I watched construction of 13th Street. They changed it from a two-lane street to a 4-lane street with a median. I watched the Porter Paint property right across from us add buildings, and as kids, we would go over and play on the dirt pile. And I had an affinity for just those environments where physical change was happening. But I didn't get into engineering because of that. I also, because I lived in Beecher Terrace and could walk to 4th Street, I always had a vision of wanting to be a business person.
Okay.
I like the look of people walking the streets, carrying briefcases and wearing suits. That was, you know, something that got me excited. So when I first went to college, I became a business major. But I realized my skill sets in academia were more technical. I was good at math. I could do the computer stuff, even though I was learning things like Fortran and so forth. But when I got done with all my math requirements in the business program, I wasn't feeling some of that other stuff.
Okay.
And so I met with one of the advisors, and they looked at my transcript. We had a conversation. You ought to consider engineering, you know, and I chose civil because I like the name.
Okay.
And so, but when I got into it, you know, this is God work, and I got into it. I learned about what it took to be a civil engineer, and I learned that, you know, when I grew up, we threw rocks at each other. We made dirt pies, but I didn't realize these were engineering materials. You build with rocks, you build with dirt, and so I was blessed to complete that program at Western. And then I got hired at the airport. Wow, that was a master's class in all things. You're talking about multi-million-dollar municipal construction projects, building new runways, building terminal buildings, building roadway systems. And I was there from when this stuff was on the planning table, right? Drawing the plans and take it to the field, bring in the contractors, do the work.
Now, before you go any further, because a lot of people don't understand the technology that was there then. So, as a draftsman, you actually had to draw this on a desktop.
A big slanted
desktop.
T-square, angle,
right.
all kinds of pins, everything by hands.
Everything by hand.
Yeah.
And AutoCAD didn't come into play until 88, 89.
Absolutely.
And I was a civil engineer in training then. designer roles for the Wyoming National Forest Service. You probably didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Doc. That's good.
So, and then we fast forward. So, what made you move out of that arena? Because I know for me, I got a master's in engineering,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to do AutoCAD.
Yeah.
That was my stomach. So I got out of architecture and sort of went more environmental.
So your question, how did I get out of the technical? And I say this often. I went from being a bricks and mortar planner and designer and builder to a human services planner, developer, and implementer. And the way that happened was I left the airport and say in '85, I think it was, or '86. Went to first the health department as the environmental engineer for about a year, and then I found out about the job at the housing authority.
That's funny you mentioned that because
Yeah.
when I came back to Louisville, it was hoping to be an environmental engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were phased that out.
Yeah, and I got, I won't say got recruited, but I learned about the opportunity at the Housing Authority through a person who I have high regard for to this day, and that was William Summers, the fourth. And I learned about that because he had been at the Housing Authority, but he had left there to go to the city to work with the then Mayor Jerry Abramson. And so they needed to backfill that position. I was at the health department at the time. They learned I was over there. So I got hired first as the assistant maintenance director. So I was still in bricks and mortar because I was dealing with, keeping the properties up. But while I was there, I promoted into a position called special programs. And right before that, I got a master's degree in urban planning.
Okay.
At U of L. And so as I got into urban planning, and I learned this thing about engineering that caused me to think different about it, and that was engineering typically is a support role. You're not necessarily the policymaker or the decision maker. You may be the designer. You may be the one that's bringing all the technical infrastructure to a project, but you ain't the one that's making the decisions.
No, you are not.
And so I learned about, in order to be in leadership, you needed to get to the policy table. You need to be there where decisions are made. And that special programs job put me in a position because I could create policy, I created programs, I created relationships, and it kind of appealed to my creative instincts. And so I did that, but then I got a entrepreneurial itch. And so in the year 2000, I left the Housing Authority and started a consulting business, Urban Technologies. Louisville Urban League became one of my top clients. But also I had clients with city governments, multiple agencies of city government. And I did that for about 3 years until the bottom of the market fell out. And that was because we had city-county merger. So some of the cities, agencies that I was working with kind of went in retreat mode. And then 9/11 hit. And when 9/11 hit, the world shifted. So I had to get back on somebody's payroll.
Right.
And I was blessed that Ben Richmond was there and said, you can always have a job here at the Urban League.
Right.
And I was there with him for 11 years until I got recruited by Sam Watkins to come to be a part of his succession in 2011.
Hello, I'm Dr. Swannie Jett. Please make sure you visit one of our 5 locations, not only in Louisville, but outside of Louisville and surrounding areas. Thank you. I am Dr. Swannie Jett, and I have a passion for public health for over 30 years. Now, I'm in a position to affect change. And these are the critical conversations about health in our community with the people who can help me make those changes. So because you have a different lens, you think about reimagining a community different.
Amen.
And because of where you grew up at. So we have to teach these lessons because the synergy to date, starting in 2020, can actually project out for the next 20, 30 years to reshape. So we should start to see a more thriving community than we did in the 90s.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think we see the the makings of those new trends. When you think about, I'm thinking about Russell neighborhood, for example, the Beach Terrace project. I grew up in Beach Terrace. I can say this proudly. That's holy land. You know, I worship that ground because it raised me as a child. And I have so many memories and experiences from that. However, as an engineer and as a policymaker, I realized that property was obsolete. That is obsolete in the sense that you can't maintain it anymore. It's outused. It's outlived its useful life.
Yes, it has.
And it's unfit. It's unhealthy to bring another generation of children. So we finally made the case that it needed to be torn down. And we say we as a community. And so now it's going to be replaced with new housing. So you think about the next generation of children that have that experience. What is their life going to be like? It's going to be different from the previous generation. And they're going to see, they're going to feel a different environment. And hopefully they get a different vibe about what life has to offer them. And then they can see pathways to get there, you know.
Well, I've seen the places so far, and I've seen the new construction, and it looks great. But you also provide, Miniversity. You have adult programming. You have youth programming around the arts. You also do a lot things in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So, what would you hold your hat on to? Like the biggest thing that you think is successful that, was great and you've made it an accomplishment?
Well, LCCC, we're celebrating 75 years, so we've been in the community for a long time, and we have as you stated, a full spectrum of family services. And we've said from birth from cradle to career, the whole spectrum, Miniversity, child development, and we're about to expand Miniversity so we can start providing healthcare services along with education services. Healthcare for expecting moms and healthcare for babies, along with getting kids ready for kindergarten. Our school age program is what it is in terms of being focused on arts education, but with the focus on leadership and academic achievement as underpinnings. And then our adult program, we just launched a project last night with Woodforest National Bank. Had a room full of budding, aspiring, some established entrepreneurs. And all of it is designed to create opportunity and instill hope and give support for people who want to be successful. And when you're a child, you don't have no choice. You're going to be successful. Somebody's got to be telling these children, you're going to be successful. When you're adult, no matter, what your role has been, may have been some ups and downs, but there's still a pathway to success, and we can help you to get there. In terms of where we hang our hat, I'm proud to say, Sam Watkins laid a strong foundation for me. The campus we have at 1300 Ali is his legacy.
A nice campus.
Yeah, and I was blessed to be brought there to bring it to life, and meaning build the programs, get the place filled with businesses, and complete the campus because we still got some construction phase. We want to build the Grand Lyric Theater, and we'll do that in 2024. That project is coming. So the goal with it, what we want to hang our hat on is we want to create commercial and cultural attractions that are worthy of anybody on this planet. When you hit Louisville, you want to come west of 9th Street for these experiences. Why? Because you can't get them nowhere else.
Right.
And that's what that's the goal, is to create destinations. And in doing that, encouraging other groups that have the same vision to create a strong West Louisville, supporting their efforts. The Urban Leagues Project, we're big fans of, certainly the work that Goodwill has done, Norton, the Y, a big fan of Dave Christopher's work and his project coming up. All of these projects are designed to be magnets.
Correct.
To bring people in. And certainly but not least, Dr. Jett, Park Duval Health Center You know, I know the history of that organization. In fact, there was a point in our history where we were in the same building, the old Village West Mall.
Oh, wow.
We
Yeah, that was a long
LCCC
time,
and Park Duval were in the same building been several years ago now. But we want, in order for West Louisville to change economically, we have to attract dollars from a wide region.
Wide spectrum.
Any thriving business corridor attracts customers from a wide area, you know, and I know that because of where I go to spend my money. With my wife
And
and
it
I,
has to be unique.
we don't live in the Highlands, but we on Bardstown Road all the time, you know, dining and sightseeing and all of that. And so we want that for West Louisville. We really want that for West Louisville. West Louisville does not have to have a bad reputation. And maybe there are incidents that need to stop. We certainly agree with that. And those perpetrators will stop when conditions change. That's my belief. And I just hold on to that. The victims will become less when people have more opportunity.
You know, I think, you know, one lasting note, you know, we're pouring a lot into infrastructure. And I'm a big proponent of infrastructure. But this community and this nation need to pour a lot into people.
Amen.
Because, you know, it's one thing to give you a nice place to stay. It's another thing to give you the social services, how to get out of poverty.
Well, Dr. Swannie Jett, I'm going to talk about your business because of decades, generations of failing to invest in people, we have a health condition that you know all too well. And if we don't address the health of people, and it's not just mental health, it's
overall health.
It's overall health. And I think you're right. We can't just build buildings and expect things to change. You gotta change people, and that means mind, body, and spirit of human beings have to be ministered to in a different way.
Right.
And I'm not the expert on that, but I can sense that we need a new way to minister to the health of our people.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming to the show today. I want to say congratulations because I know you're in the Power 50.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to the show today. I appreciate everybody's enlightened conversation. Feel free, if you ever want to comment on the show, go to our website. You can place a comment there. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.